Hello and welcome to 20 Lore Pro. I'm SirAshtown, and joined with me today is Zan Syed off of his big win from the Disney Lorcana Challenge in Vegas. Zan, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
We're glad to have you today. This is really cool, and I mean, we're really excited to just see you make it all the way to the top 8 and then to the big win. We've seen you in some other tournaments along the way, and just really excited to kind of hear your thoughts today on the challenge and how everything went.
Yeah, I mean, I got the win, so it went great.
Before we jump into that, I know there's still some people in the community who may not know who you are and kind of your background in trading card games. So could you tell us a little bit about your history in trading card games and how you came into playing Lorcana?
Yeah, I mean, started with Yu-Gi-Oh! When I was a kid. In undergrad, I started playing Magic. It kind of just started off as like a thing that I did with my roommates. Eventually I went to F&M, and then eventually I got to play at the pro level. And then after the pandemic, I retired from Magic and found Lorcana, like literally day one when they spoiled the cards at D23, and then just kept up with it ever since.
Wow, I didn't realize that you had been a Magic the Gathering pro in the past. Someone had mentioned to me in the past that you had been a very successful player in Magic the Gathering, but what was that like competing on the pro level?
I mean, it was great. I got to meet players like Brennan DeCandia. That's why we've known each other for a decade. I mean, it was an interesting experience. I would say I like the Lorcana community a lot more. They're a lot more chill, but also more enthusiastic in a positive way. Yeah, I'm just like excited to be a part of a game from day one.
Getting into your tournament run and looking here at DLC Vegas, how has set 5 been for you so far, and have you enjoyed the color pairings and the new decks that have come to light due to the Bucky errata?
So I had a rough start. I played in the first tournament I played was the CCS 10K. This one I didn't do so well. I did make day 2, but I lost the first round and didn't make top 32. But I played Amber Steel, and I felt like I owed it to Amber Steel to try and figure out the best version, but I kept getting paired against blue red and got smashed, and I felt like I had a list that was like probably better against it because I was still playing some number of flutes. I felt bad about the deck, but I wanted to use that tournament not to exactly win. If I win, that's nice, but I want to get data, and so I'm willing to test what I think is not the best deck in order to get that data. Then the next day I played in the 1K, and I played Amber Emerald. And I started off 3-0, and then I lost every round after that to matchups that were good, like red purple. And I felt like the deck was just like kind of a glass cannon. And even though I felt like I mulliganed properly, my mulligans just never lined up. So I was glad not to play that deck. And getting the data on it from that, I was pretty set on one of the top 3 decks, either blue-red, red-purple, or amber steel. But amber steel was kind of at the bottom. I had kind of settled on blue-red, but basically when Lorcana Bro reached out to me the week before, we ended up just testing a bunch of different shells, and I tried out Specie's red-green discard shell, and that kind of led me down the path of coming back to Emerald Steel. And once I came back to Emerald Steel, I felt like the core of the deck was solid, but I needed to figure out the other things. And so, you know, Prince John was a realization, and Hypnotize was a realization. And once you figure those cards out, then you know it's going to be a discard shell, and you just figure out one card at a time. You're kind of like, okay, I want to mulligan towards Diablo, but you want to have another mulligan plan that could potentially just win you the game. And that became Morphin to Beast. And so once you figure all these things out, then the shell starts to make a lot of sense. So that all happened up until the Friday before the tournament. Honestly, it was a crazy roller coaster, and I definitely wasn't sleeping a lot. I was staying up till 4, testing, just trying to figure out how to build this deck optimally. I mean, it paid off, right? So it was worth it.
It's interesting to hear you say that even like the week before the tournament, you were still testing. Like you weren't giving up on ideas, you weren't giving up on listening to others' opinions, and then taking those lists that they were creating or wanting input from, and then really giving them a good edge and try to see what would work best.
The other thing is I'm pretty much an open book. I did send the deck to 10 people. I would say 8 out of the 10 people thought the deck was unplayable and bad. And that's kind of like the response I expect. The 2 people that said that the deck had potential or was good kind of gave me the confidence to keep going. You know, Lorcana Bro being one of those people.
Do you know if Lorcana Bro ended up taking a similar list to you to the event, or did he play something else?
He did play a similar deck. I think I saw that he ended up regressing to a different version, but still having elements of this version. We were both the night before set on this version, and then he had some doubt. I think that can happen to anybody. When you're testing this close, even if you have the most broken deck, people can shift away just because of the uncertainty, you know?
You might have, like you were saying, the great deck, but you just play a couple of matchups that you get bad draws or bad hands and you get stomped and you're like, I don't know if I want to play this next day. Like,
yeah, it takes a lot of resilience. Oftentimes teams and people like to be super secretive, but it ends up being to their own demise because they don't end up reaching the potential of the deck because they don't have enough data coming in. And so yeah. I shared the deck list a lot to try to get more data quickly. And I think that being secretive makes sense when you're playing in like a closed tournament. For example, Continentals is going to be a much more closed tournament where we know a bunch of people are playing in it. And if I release my deck list for that, that could be to my demise, right? But in an open field, you just need to get to the best answer, because if you don't, then you're going to leave wins on the table.
Yeah, I think it even becomes almost more important to share your deck list to gather more data, especially when there's no online client for your trading card game that you're in.
I was so nervous. On Friday to play this deck.
It's just hard because you get, like, at least I should say in my experience, I've gotten into play group, we test amongst each other, and you can almost do your own gauntlet of playing against all the major decks, and you're playing against the same people, and you almost need more, like, you need more people, different decks, different ideas, and it's hard to get that within just a small group of people. You have to expand.
Yeah, sometimes you can even share the deck list with other people and they'll get completely opposite results. So that's kind of what happened for Vegas. I sent the list to my friends and they tested it against Blue Red and they lost like every time. They lost so much that they were like, we're going to put Green Steel permanently on the play. And then when I flew in Thursday night, I was like, okay, I want to play. I'm going to play against Blue Red. And I just like straight 5-0'd it.
Whoa.
And they were like, oh, we weren't doing all of these things that you're doing.
Wow.
And so it ended up being like a playstyle difference that allowed them to see how powerful the deck actually was. So sometimes it can be a bunch of different factors that you're not considering. And so sometimes data can work against you, and you need to basically filter the data. You need to be like, this is real, this is not real. And you have to have good sound reasoning for it.
It goes to show too that knowing the reason why every single card is in your deck and what it's supposed to function as and all the lines that it can have and interactions is incredibly vital when playing a deck.
Yep, it's super vital. Like in Lorcana especially, you get to see a lot of your deck in a tournament and every card is going to have huge impact. A lot of people feel like, oh, this card is good in some narrow situations. I'm going to play it and it's inkable. And sometimes they draw that card at the wrong time and it just costs them the entire match and their tournament's over because of that. If you've played Magic before, it's like your sideboard is in your main deck. And if you don't take into account how impactful every single card is, you've lost the tournament before you started playing in it.
That's really incredible to hear. And I can tell, especially from the history that you're giving on your process from building this deck, that you really understood why each card belonged in the deck and its purpose. And I'd love to hear kind of a broad overview, your Emerald Steel list that you took to Vegas to win the whole event.
You can think about the deck similar to Green Steel Bucky. It's basically the same deck except for that Bucky's gone. How do you enable Bucky? You play a bunch of Floodborn characters, right? And those Floodborn characters trigger Bucky, which allows you to win the game. In this deck, your Bucky is Prince John. And so what Prince John cares about is making your opponent discard. And so what you need to do in order to build this deck correctly is have a minimum amount of cards that have discard in them. And so Bruno and Hypnotize and Sudden Chill being that engine, every time someone suggested I cut those cards, I had to say no, because Bucky doesn't work if you don't have Floodborn characters, and Prince John doesn't work if you don't have discard cards. And so you just have to ignore everything and say, I need to play a minimum amount of discard. And once you do that, then everything else is about the environment that this deck is walking into. And so knowing that Ember Steel is either going to be the second or third most played deck, you're thinking about what are the cards that are going to be good against that, and that's how you get to Muses and Cove as well, right? You're in a great spot. And Muses also just lines up so well against Daisy Duck. So, that's like one of your weaknesses. The other weakness of this deck is locations. And so you want to think about how you would deal with locations. And so we had Cricky in there for a while, but we settled on getting rid of Along Came Zeus for Ana. And Ana has a clause of giving a character +2 power for the turn. And that's not as good as Along Came Zeus, but it's a much more consistent card that can line up well against everything, right? Like Tamatoa can be a problem, but it's not a problem if you're able to let the Storm Rage on Ana it, right? And if you have a Muse, you can bounce the Ana back to your hand and do it again and again and again and again, So this deck really rewards you for understanding its many combos, but if you can't answer something, most likely if you make them discard it, that's the best answer. Discard doesn't discriminate against any card, but you can make them discard any card. So that's great.
Now, looking at this list, you'd kind of mentioned that one of the weaknesses that you felt like was going against Amber Steel Song. Do you feel like that was the worst matchup? And if so, was it the Muse lines that really helped you go over the edge and win that match?
Honestly, the way I felt the whole weekend was all my matchups are favorable except the mirror match. Amber Steel is a playstyle matchup. They don't understand how to play against me, but I understand how to play against them. If my opponent looks at their hand and sees grab your swords, they're most likely going to keep it. And the moment that they keep that card in their hand, they probably lost because I'm going to try to keep Ursula and try to answer that card. Now, if they ship it, then they have to find it. They have to find it in a moment where I can't take it from their hand, right? And I don't Pete them, I don't Ursula them. The other thing that people discount is they don't understand the value of people not practicing against a deck, right? If this deck is like 90% close to what Bucky used to be and people stop practicing against this, imagine you played against Bucky for the first time. You just lose because you didn't understand what you're supposed to do at every single point. People not understanding how to adapt is like the biggest downfall. The deck I was most afraid of in top 8 was Blue Steel. Not because I felt like Blue Steel was a good matchup against me. It's because I played 0 Blue Steel in testing. Because I had no expectation of playing it in a moment that mattered. If you saw the Blue Steel player in top 8, they were playing like a bunch of 1-ofs. They're playing 1 Tipo, 1 Visions of Beyond. It was a lot of 1-ofs. And you're like, anything can happen. They don't even know it's going to happen. They were playing like that card that looks at that location that looks at the top card of both players' deck. Anything can happen, right? That's why I was so afraid of that deck, because I was like, my opponent doesn't even know what's happening. I don't know what's happening in their deck. No one knows. So I was scared of the deck because it was like operating on pure chaos, I felt like. For me, the thing I'm scared of the most is chaos. My opponents should be afraid of that as well because they have no practice against it, right? So I was 32nd seed, so I got to be on the play round 1. 32nd is such a fortunate number, right? Because you get to play against 33rd.
Oh, that's interesting.
Play again. Yeah, it was super interesting because
wow.
Zach Bivens was number 1 seed playing against 64 seed. And if Zach won, then I have to play against him, but I'll be on the draw. But there was an upset. 64 beat number 1.
Wow.
And I got to play against 64 and I got to be on the play against that. It's a weird but incredible tournament where I was like, I felt it was easier than the testing, So
man, I didn't realize that there was an upset like that. I knew that Zach Bevins had been taken out early. I just didn't know that he was the number 1 and to 64, and then you got to play on the play. Wow.
On the play as opposed to the draw. I had an expectation that I was going to play against Zach in that tournament. I mean, it just worked out for me. And Zach had played against my best friend who played my exact 60, 2-0'd my best friend whose name is Jeremy. So since he had gotten 2-0'd, I was like, okay, I'm most likely going to have to play against Zach. And when I didn't have to play against Zach, then it was just going to be a smoother tournament. Like, I mean, he's a great player, but on top of being a great player, the only matchup that I was scared of was the mirror match.
Right.
I felt great about every other matchup except for the mirror match. And so anything can happen in a mirror. I would say it's like 50-50, and then you have to see who's on the play, and you give more percentage points to the person on the play, and then how well that they play and stuff like that. And so So I was afraid to play against Amir, and in the finals, I literally looked at my opponent and I was like, this is a coin flip. But it ended up not being a coin flip because I ended up specifically drawing the cards that they weren't playing.
Wow.
And that gave me an advantage.
So looking at the tournament DLC, I hadn't heard that when y'all were doing top 8 that they made it like a movie theater style. Could you describe that a little bit for us? So y'all were on a stage and everyone was watching live?
Yeah, so we were on a stage and we're sitting in the middle of it. For a while, they had 2 tables where they had 2 feature matches going at the same time.
Yeah.
And then when they got to the finals, they removed everything and they just put 1 table, right? It's just me and my opponent. And then a bunch of judges around us. Now, over here, there's stairs. And as soon as you walk down the stairs, what you're going to see is a bunch of tables and chairs with probably like 100 or 200 people just watching the side of the stage. So if this is the stage, you're looking up at the stage. On the corner here is a giant screen that everybody's watching your matches.
Oh my gosh. Oh, there was a slight delay.
Yeah, I'm pretty positive there was a slight delay. But every time you top decked and you thought you were thinking like, what should I do? Everybody would scream. They'd be like, "Oh my God, he top decked the Tamatoa!" Everybody's going crazy.
Oh my
gosh! In the finals, they took away the hands, so they couldn't see the hands. So they were just going crazy because all they got to see was that I had the absolute nuts in game 2. If you've been to a DLC before, this was the best DLC I've ever been to.
Really?
This one has improved significantly, but this one was way on another level in terms of just things just keep improving. Both the creators of the game were there, and apparently Bob Iger showed up too, the CEO of Disney. It was a wild weekend.
And that's really encouraging to hear. You're not the first person I've heard say that every challenge has gotten better than the last. And there is a huge factor for being a player up on the stage live and everyone's watching you, but also for the audience. That's really cool to see. Like, that makes being an audience member that much more enjoyable, to be there in person and see like these players go at it. That's really neat.
So they staggered the top 8. So everybody got to watch all of the top 8, and I had to go first. I was like part of the first group. But as soon as I finished my match, I got to watch the rest of the people in top 8. Like, the best thing ever. I remember I was in the finals. I won game 1, and I walked down the stairs, right? And I told you that the movie screen's right there and the tables are there, and behind them is the bathrooms. So I'm walking past them, and they're like, they start clapping, and I'm like, guys, this is just like, I'm just going to the bathroom. And everybody just like starts laughing, because our first game 1 took an hour. So,
oh my goodness. Well, I mean, you're thinking through all the lines. Like, yeah, that's...
No, if you haven't seen game 1, you should go watch it. It's it might be the most... I mean, I'm biased, but people have been telling me that it's the most incredible game that they've ever seen. I think that it's the most incredible game that I've ever played. You need to watch it. It's definitely worth watching it. I usually don't tell people, hey, you should go watch my matches. But if there's one game that you watch, it's finals game 1. Like, I made a mistake in the match, and I literally looked at my opponent and the judges, and I was like, I need to mentally reset right now. I'm gonna reset right now. And went back into the tank, and I was like, all right, can I get out of this spot? Then you get to watch me figure out some insane stuff. It's kind of crazy.
Looking at the future, we have Continentals coming up. There's another DLC in Seattle. What are kind of your projections for the future as far as you're preparing for Continentals and what you want to do here in set 5, at least going into set 6 with Lorcana?
For Seattle, unfortunately, I have to go to a friend's wedding. Fortunately and unfortunately, I really was hoping that I was going to be able to go to Seattle and maybe run it back. That would have been cool. Set 6 will be out. That'll probably be my next major tournament besides set championships. For set championships, I can't imagine not playing Emerald Steel, even though people locally are telling me that everybody's playing Emerald Steel now.
Yeah, in set 6, if I'm not mistaken, that is going to be the last set that comes out for Continentals that you're going to be playing with in the card pool of cards available to you.
Which is exciting, which is definitely exciting. But going to be difficult, and it's going to be a scary puzzle to crack before a tournament.
Any advice that you have for those who are looking to compete at the top level and are trying to get to the day 2 so that way they can qualify for Continentals?
The number one thing I'll say is don't make the result your focus. Going into this tournament, I wasn't like, I'm going to win this tournament. It was more so like, let me figure out the deck. Let me play the best I can possibly play and try to battle for each game. And then when you're doing that, eventually you get to the result that you're looking for. But if you're just thinking about that, you don't have enough capacity to think about what matters, what will actually get you the game, you know? Focus on one turn at a time. And once you do that, once you master that, then you'll automatically give yourself the opportunities.
Well, anything that you'd like to say to the 20 Lore Pro community specifically? Anyone you'd like to shout out from the community or say to them?
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Lorcana, bro, for helping me figure out this deck. You know, thank you to all the rest of my friends for all your support.
Well, thank you so much, Zan, for joining us today. We really appreciate you interviewing with us and sharing your thoughts, especially on the state of Lorcana and how DLC Vegas went for you. We're wishing you good luck in the future. And again, thank you so much for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Hello and welcome to 20 Lore Pro. I'm SirAshtown, and we're kind of about to hit a big mile marker here with the 20 Lore Pro YouTube channel. And so I just want to take a second to kind of highlight that and to thank y'all so much as a community for really just coming together and enjoying the content that we create and choosing to come and allow 20 Lore Pro to be a part of the content that you watch here on YouTube for Lorcana. I know that there's lots of other content creators that are out there that are very good, but I'm so thankful that you have chosen to take the time to choose us as one of the channels that you subscribe to and that you watch. We are really close to 2,000 subscribers here on YouTube. Huge accomplishment. I just want to thank everyone so much for just tuning in. It can be kind of difficult sometimes to find motivation just to continue to make content because it's time consuming. It takes a lot of time to do the interviews, to edit all the videos, and then to publish them. And so really seeing y'all's comments of support, seeing y'all out and about on the Disney Lorcana challenges or other 1Ks that we go to across Texas, or like to the Charlie's Collectible show in Atlanta, Georgia, just seeing community members just say hello and saying thank you for the content, it really motivates me, and it really helps just with a desire to continue to make this type of content for y'all. So thank you again for being here as part of the 20 Lore Pro YouTube channel and for enjoying our content. If you haven't already, we have a Discord. We really recommend it. Lots of deck discussions, just lots of people who are talking about how they can better play Lorcana and build a community. So if you're not a part of the 20 Lore Pro Discord, head on over there. Link in the description below. Here's to hoping for another great year for Lorcana as we're going into year 2. We're really excited for Continentals. I'm going to be there in person. So if you see me and you're at Disneyland and you're checking out Continentals like I'm going to be doing, come on by and say hello. Really looking forward to just seeing all the players, but also seeing the community members like you out there and about walking around. Love to say hi and just love to meet everybody. And here's to hoping that we can get to 5,000.